The air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar metal, the hum of unknown machinery vibrating through the walls. She had never imagined that the inside of a spaceship could feel so organic. Her breath came in shallow gasps, the cold sweat on her forehead, making her fingers slip as she gripped the edge of the strange metallic table in front of her. The only light was an eerie blue glow pulsing from somewhere deep within the ship's core. Her heart pounded in her chest as her eyes darted around the room. She had no idea how she got here. One moment she had been walking through the park, looking up at the stars, wondering if there were others out there, and now she was trapped, surrounded by shadows and eerie quiet, in the heart of an alien vessel. Her mind screamed at her, but there was nothing to do but wait. She had always thought, like everyone else, that if humans ever made contact with an alien species, it would be peaceful, perhaps even beneficial. The movies had shown us shaking, hands sharing knowledge and exchanging technologies. But this felt like something out of a nightmare. She tried to calm her breathing, her eyes shifting once again to the strange object that lay before her. The walls around her began to shift, or maybe it was just her mind playing tricks. No, it was real. The metal seemed to grow and contract, like the ship was breathing. The humming grew louder, reverberating through her bones, and then, suddenly, everything stopped. It was then that she heard it. The low, unearthly sound, like the rustle of leaves in a storm, but so much deeper, vibrating through the very air. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but there was nowhere to go. Her feet were frozen to the floor, and then, through the shadows, it came. The alien. She hadn't seen it clearly yet, only the shape. A figure cloaked in shadows, tall and lean, with long limbs that moved fluidly like liquid. Its face, if it could be called a face, was a blur, shifting in a way that made it impossible to focus. She could only make out the faint outline of a large, round head, no visible eyes, just a gleaming reflection where its features should be. And then it moved closer. Her pulse quickened, her mind fighting to understand. She had read about alien encounters. There were dozens of theories, hundreds of stories, but none of them ever described this. She thought she would scream, but the sound died in her throat, replaced by a chilling silence. The creature was standing right in front of her now, too close. She could feel its presence like a weight pressing on her chest, and the breath in her lungs seemed to freeze. Its body, if you could even call it that, was a strange mass of glimmering, shifting skin. It was neither human nor anything she could even describe, a chaotic form that seemed to constantly change as it moved. And then it extended a hand, long fingers, no nails, but smooth like glass, reaching toward her. Her breath caught in her throat and a sudden fear flooded her. It's going to devour me, just like in the stories. Her mind raced as she prepared for the worst. The ancient legends had always warned of aliens that came to harvest humans, to feed off their flesh or energy. She had heard the rumors. Human beings had been abducted, and some had never returned. Others came back changed, their memories erased, their minds shattered. But none of those stories had prepared her for this. I'm going to die here. Her body trembled, and she instinctively took a step back, but the creature moved with inhuman speed. It was too quick. Its long fingers brushed against her arm, sending a cold shock through her veins, like ice racing through her blood. But it didn't hurt. It was odd. Alien, yes, but there was no pain. Just cold, a deep, unnatural chill. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized it wasn't trying to hurt her. It wasn't trying to devour her. It was studying her. The realization hit her like a bolt of lightning, but before she could make sense of it, a low, vibrating sound filled the room again, this time from the alien itself. The noise. It was a hum, an unintelligible noise, seemed to ripple through the air, surrounding her, penetrating her thoughts. The cold fingers never left her skin, though, and her heartbeat thrummed in her ears. What was it trying to do? What did it want? Her mind screamed for answers, but the alien only stood there, unmoving. It had done something to her. Her body felt strange now, lighter, as if she were floating above the ground. Her mind swirled with confusion. Her thoughts jumbled. The alien seemed to be reading her, or something worse, as though its presence could invade her very mind. And then, with a sudden shift in its form, the creature released her arm. The warmth returned to her skin, and she gasped, stumbling, backward, away from the alien. She wanted to run, but her legs felt as though they had turned to jelly, her body unwilling to obey. But the alien, it didn't move, it just watched her, silently. Its face, or whatever it had for a face, was still impossible to read, but she could sense something now, a glimmer of intelligence. It's not trying to kill me. But what is it doing? Before she could process the thought, the alien took a step back, its form blurring even more, shifting faster now, as if it were unsure of what to do next. And then, in a voice so quiet she almost didn't hear it, the creature spoke. Not devour, learn. The words were soft, mechanical, almost like a translation, a misunderstanding of language. But it wasn't the words that shocked her, it was the implication. This alien wasn't here to harm her. It wasn't here to feed on her or take her life. It was here to learn. Her mind reeled. It didn't make sense. Why her? Why now? Why did they choose her? And what did they want to learn? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The dim alien stood in front of her, still watching, waiting. The silence between them grew unbearable. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature vanished into the shadows. The blue glow in the room faded, and the walls returned to their cold, lifeless state. She was left standing there, heart-pounding, breath shallow, with more questions than answers. The alien's words echoed in her mind, not devour, learn. What did that even mean? And why her? Why was she the one chosen to be studied or learned from? She stumbled to her feet, the ground beneath her seeming to shift as her thoughts raced. She needed to understand what had just happened, but more importantly, she needed to figure out what came next. This was just the beginning. The alien's words echoed in her head, like a broken record, skipping and repeating over and over. Not devour, learn. The phrase was as confusing as it was terrifying. She had expected to face something monstrous, something that would destroy her, not some form of cold curiosity. Her heart was still racing. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps as she stood in the center of the dimly lit room. The ship around her was silent now, as if the events of the past few minutes had never even happened. The alien had disappeared without a trace. The only evidence of its presence was the lingering chill in the air and the strange sense of disorientation that clouded her thoughts. But there was something else, something much deeper than the terror, she felt. There was a gnawing question inside her that demanded answers. Why me, she thought, pacing back and forth. Why was I chosen? What does it want to learn from me? She stopped abruptly, her eyes scanning the space. The walls were featureless, smooth, cold metal. She couldn't see any controls or buttons, no windows. The only thing that seemed out of place was a set of strange markings etched into the walls. Symbols she couldn't understand. They looked almost ancient. Her thoughts swirled, and for a brief moment she considered trying to escape. But where would she go? She didn't even know where she was, let alone how to get out. And the alien? No. The aliens had made it clear that they were capable of far more than she could ever understand. Taking a deep breath, she wiped her sweaty palms on her clothes and decided to explore the ship. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that staying in this one place was not an option. She needed to figure out what was happening to her, to understand what the alien had meant. She walked cautiously toward the back of the room, where a narrow passageway opened up. The walls here, though still metallic, seemed to be etched with more of the cryptic symbols. Her fingers traced the markings, trying to make sense of them, but nothing came to her. The symbols didn't feel like random designs. There was a strange energy about them, a hum, almost like they were alive, waiting to be understood. Her steps echoed in the silence as she moved deeper into the ship. The passageway was narrow but long, and it twisted in a way that felt unnatural, almost like the ship was alive, shifting around her as she moved through it. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, though she saw no one. Finally, she reached the end of the passageway, where a door-like structure loomed in front of her. There was no handle, no keypad, nothing that suggested how to open it, but as her fingers brushed against the smooth surface, the door silently slid open, revealing another room, this one larger though equally dark. She stepped inside cautiously, but the moment she did, a low, rumbling hum vibrated through the floor, sending a shiver up her spine. The room seemed to come alive, its shape changing in a way that made her dizzy. It was almost like the walls were folding inward, or maybe they were expanding outward, shifting in response to her presence. And then there was a sound, like a voice, but not one she could comprehend. The alien language, perhaps. The voice was soft but persistent, repeating something she couldn't understand. She squinted into the darkness, hoping to make out some clue, some indication of where she was. But all she could see were more walls, more markings, more symbols. Suddenly a flash of light, a bright white light pierced through the darkness, blinding her for a moment. She raised her hand instinctively to shield her eyes, and when the light faded, she saw something else. A figure. It was another alien, similar in appearance to the one she had encountered earlier, but this one was different. It had the same glowing, shifting form, but its presence felt more powerful somehow. The first alien had been cold, curious. This one, however, exuded an aura of authority, a presence that demanded respect. The alien stood perfectly still, its gaze fixed on her. It didn't speak, but she felt the weight of its attention, as if it were studying her every move. She swallowed hard, unsure of what to do next. Her mind raced with questions, but no answers came. "Are you here to devour me?" she asked, the words slipping out before she could stop them. The alien didn't respond at first. It just stood there, silent, its body shifting and swirling in the eerie light. And then, in a voice that was oddly clear, it spoke. "Devour." The word sounded almost amused. "No, we do not devour, we learn." The cold realization hit her again, the same one she had felt before. It wasn't here to hurt her, it was here to learn. But what did that mean? What kind of learning was this alien referring to? "Learn what?" she asked, her voice a little steadier now. "What do you want to learn from me?" The alien tilted its head slightly, its glowing form shifting in a way that made it appear both enigmatic and unsettling. It didn't answer immediately. Instead, it raised a long arm, pointing to the strange symbols on the wall. The symbols seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy as its fingers brushed against them, and for a moment, the room itself seemed to vibrate. I don't understand," she whispered, taking a hesitant step forward. "What do they mean?" This alien lowered its arm and faced her directly. Its features, if they could be called features, were impossible to describe. There was no face, no mouth, no eyes, just a blank, smooth surface that seemed to shimmer with a life of its own. "It is not for you to understand," it said softly, the words somehow both comforting and terrifying at the same time. "But you will learn. You will help us learn." She blinked in confusion. "Help you learn? How?" The alien's form seemed to ripple, as though it were considering her question. "Through you, through your experiences, through your memories." Her pulse quickened, a feeling of dread settling in her stomach. The alien wasn't just here to observe. It wanted something from her. It needed her to, what? Teach it. But how could her human memories, her experiences, be of any use to a being so vastly different from her? What could she possibly offer that would help them? "Why me?" she blurted out. "Why am I the one you need?" The alien moved closer, its form towering over her. Its presence was overwhelming, but somehow she felt an odd sense of calm in its proximity. Like it wasn't threatening her, but simply being around her. "Because you are human," it said simply, the words almost matter-of-fact. "You represent the species we have come to study. You are a window into the unknown." She frowned, trying to make sense of its words. "But I don't understand. What do you want to learn from humans? What is it about us that interests you so much?" The alien's form flickered again, as though it were gathering its thoughts. "You are the anomaly," it finally said. "The one species that defied the odds. You have survived where others have failed. You have reached the stars. You are the key to understanding what lies beyond." She stared at the alien, trying to digest its cryptic words. Survived where others had failed? The key to understanding what lay beyond. What did that even mean? And why had they picked her out, of all people, to be their subject? Before she could ask another question, the alien seemed to lose interest in her, turning away, as if her presence no longer mattered. It walked to the far wall and placed its hand against the symbols. There was a soft, melodic hum, and the symbols glowed brighter. A new pattern began to form, one that seemed to shift and change right before her eyes. The alien seemed to be communicating with something, some force, some intelligence beyond her understanding. And she felt utterly helpless. Standing there, unable to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. What have I gotten myself into? The silence in the room felt oppressive. The hum of the ship's systems was ever present, like a constant reminder that she was trapped in a place she didn't understand, surrounded by beings whose intentions were still shrouded in mystery. The alien who had communicated with her, the one who had shown so little emotion, seemed to retreat into itself, leaving her alone in the room with her thoughts. Her mind raced. She had questions, so many questions, but they were all tangled up, a mess of confusion and fear. Why? Was I chosen? What do they want from me? What do they mean by, "You are the key"? The alien's words kept reverberating in her head, repeating over and over like a cryptic riddle she couldn't solve. "You represent the species we have come to study. You are the anomaly," it had said. The anomaly. Her heart skipped her, beat every time she thought of it. She wasn't sure what she had expected when she'd been taken from Earth. The idea of encountering extraterrestrial life was a thought she'd often toyed with, but facing the reality was nothing like she had imagined. The alien's words hadn't been threatening, but the cold detachment with which it had spoken only made things worse. There was no compassion, no empathy. She was just another subject, something to be studied, analyzed. Her eyes flickered too, the symbols on the walls still glowing faintly in the dim light. The alien had been so focused on them, as if they held the answers to questions she hadn't even thought to ask. She couldn't understand the markings, but she had to admit that something about them felt important. The ship's interior was disorienting. Every corridor seemed to look the same. No matter how many turns she took, how many passageways she explored, it all felt like one endless winding maze. She tried pushing open doors, but they led to more strange rooms filled with more bizarre symbols and nothing that made sense. The alien had left her to wander, and as terrifying as it was, she couldn't deny the feeling that she was meant to see something, that the ship, with its cryptic symbols and alien technology, was trying to tell her something. She knew she had to get to the bottom of it. There was no going back. But the fear that clung to her like a second skin made every step feel like a burden. She didn't know what awaited her at the end of this journey, but staying here, waiting in the unknown, seemed worse. After a long while, she made her way down another winding corridor, this one narrower than the others. The walls seemed to press in on her as she walked, and the faint hum grew louder with each step. She stopped in front of a door, her heart pounding in her chest. It was different from the others. It wasn't just another smooth metal surface. There was something about it, a slight vibration, as though it were alive. Her fingers brushed the surface, and the door slid open silently, revealing a room unlike anything she had seen before. It was larger than the others, filled with strange equipment and devices she didn't recognize. In the center of the room was a raised platform, surrounded by monitors and holographic displays. There were chairs and a table covered in strange instruments, none of which seemed to have any purpose she could comprehend. The atmosphere in the room was thick, charged with a sense of anticipation, as though something was waiting to happen. She stepped cautiously inside, her breath shallow. It was the first time she had felt like she was on the edge of something significant. As she walked further into the room, she noticed something on one of the tables. It was a small, cylindrical object, metallic, smooth, and glowing faintly with the same strange light she had seen before. Curiosity piqued, she reached for it. Her fingers hovered over it for a moment before she finally picked it up, the cool metal sending a shiver up her spine. Suddenly, a voice sounded behind her, soft but commanding. "Do not touch that." She spun around in shock, her heart leaping. Into her throat, standing in the doorway, was the alien, the one she had spoken with earlier. It was still as cold and emotionless as before, its shifting, glowing form making it impossible to focus on any particular feature. It simply was, an incomprehensible presence. She quickly dropped the object back onto the table, her hands trembling. "What is that?" she demanded. "What are you keeping from me?" The alien moved closer, its form rippling as it stepped into the room. The lights from the equipment bathed it in an ethereal glow, casting long shadows across the walls. "Information," it replied simply. "Something that must not be understood. Not yet." The words sent a chill down her spine. "Why? Why is it so important?" The alien paused, as if considering her question. "Because you are not ready. You have not yet learned what you must." She opened her mouth to argue, to demand more answers, but she was cut off by a sudden series of beeps coming from one of the monitors. The alien turned toward it, its attention shifting away from her. Her chance. Taking a deep breath, she moved toward the monitor, her hands shaking as she tried to get a closer look at the data scrolling across the screen. What she saw made her stomach drop. The readings weren't just scientific, they were personal. They were tracking her biological data, her memories, her pulse quickened, her mind spinning. The alien had been collecting data on her, but that wasn't all. It was as if they were analyzing her entire life, pulling apart her every thought, every experience, as if she were some kind of experiment. "Stop!" she demanded, turning back to face the alien. "Stop studying me! Stop controlling my life!" The alien's gaze fixed on her again. But there was something different this time. It wasn't angry. It wasn't anything at all. It was understanding. "You misunderstand," the alien said. "We are not controlling you. We are learning from you, from your species. The time for destruction has passed. We are no longer conquerors." She furrowed her brow. "Then what are you? Why me? Why am I being used for this?" The alien's form shimmered again, a subtle change in its demeanor. "Because you are human. You possess something unique, a strength, a resilience we can only begin to comprehend. Your species has fought, struggled, and survived against impossible odds. That is why we are here, to understand how you did it." To understand why you are capable of the impossible. The words hit her like a ton of bricks. She hadn't realized it before, but now it made sense. They weren't here to destroy humanity. They were here to study it, to understand how humans had survived, how they had reached the stars, and how they could fight back against impossible odds. But what did that mean for her? Why was she the one they had chosen? What did they need from her specifically? "You are the key," the alien repeated, its voice softer now. "Through you we learn. Through you we will understand." She closed her eyes, trying to wrap her head around everything that had been revealed, but it still didn't make sense. The alien's words were riddled with paradoxes. It spoke of peace and understanding, but all it had done so far was study her, manipulate her, and keep her captive in this strange, unknown place. "Then why don't you just ask me?" she said, her voice filled with frustration. "Why all the secrecy? Why the lies?" The alien didn't respond immediately. Its form shimmered once more, and for the briefest of moments it seemed almost hesitant. "We do not understand your species' ways," it said finally, the words slow and deliberate. "We do not understand your emotions, your fears, your resistance. You humans, you are both fragile and strong. You break and bend, yet you persist. We do not understand. Why?" Her heart thundered in her chest. Fragile and strong. Was that what they needed to understand? The very nature of humanity itself. The room was growing colder now. The alien's form flickered, and the light from the monitors seemed to dim, casting the room in deeper shadows. Something had shifted in the air, something she couldn't quite grasp, but she knew that the answers she sought, answers she had never even considered, were within her grasp. But would she be ready to face them? Or would she, like all the others before her, become just another subject in their endless search for knowledge? The air was thick with tension. The walls of the ship, cold and metallic, seemed to pulse with a strange energy, almost as if the vessel itself were alive. Sarah felt the weight of everything pressing down on her, questions that had no answers, fears that had no resolution, and a creeping sense that she was losing control. The alien's words echoed in her mind. "You are the key." But what did that mean? The key to what? The alien's cryptic statements had only made things worse. She didn't know whether to trust what it said or to fear the implications of its knowledge. The more she learned, the less she understood, and the deeper she was drawn into this alien mystery. She couldn't stay in that room forever. The sterile atmosphere of the ship, the eerie silence, the oppressive knowledge that she was being watched. It was too much. She needed answers, and the only way to find them was to keep moving forward. A soft hum filled the air, breaking the quiet. Sarah turned, her breath catching in her throat as she saw the door slide open behind her. It was the alien again, appearing, as if out of nowhere, its glowing form shimmering faintly in the dim light. "You will come with me," it said, its voice emotionless and commanding. She hesitated, fear welling up inside her. "Where are you taking me?" she demanded. She was done being passive, done just following its orders. She had to know what was really happening. "To the core of the ship," the alien replied. "There is something you must see, something that will help you understand." Sarah's pulse quickened. The core of the ship? What could be there that would explain anything? She had seen parts of the ship, but nothing seemed important, just strange, empty spaces filled with mysterious devices and symbols. But the core, she had no idea what that meant, and her mind ran wild with possibilities. "Lead the way," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. She had to know what was going on. She had to understand. The alien didn't speak again, as it turned and glided down the hallway. Sarah followed, her footsteps hesitant but determined. As they passed through the winding corridors, she couldn't help but notice the subtle differences in this part of the ship. The walls were darker, more intricate, the symbols etched into them more complex. It was as if they were approaching something ancient, something far older than anything she had seen before. The alien's presence beside her felt both oppressive and strangely comforting. She wasn't sure what it wanted from her, but for the first time since her abduction, she didn't feel completely isolated. She was walking beside it, moving toward the unknown together. They came to a large, imposing door, unlike anything she had seen before. The symbols on the surface were unlike any she could recognize, even from her limited understanding. The door was circular, made of the same gleaming metal as the rest of the ship, but it was lined with intricate, pulsating lights. The alien stopped in front of it and raised one arm, the light from its form flickering as it made some sort of gesture. The door slowly began to slide open, revealing an expansive chamber that was unlike anything Sarah could have imagined. The room was vast, larger than anything she had seen on the ship. It was filled with technology she couldn't begin to comprehend. Machines and devices humming softly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. In the center of the room stood a large, circular platform, surrounded by glowing conduits and strange symbols. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, the air thick with a sense of anticipation. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat as she took in the sight. This wasn't just a room. This was the heart of the ship, the center of whatever this alien force was, the core, and she was standing right in the middle of it. "What is this place?" she whispered, her voice barely audible in the vastness of the room. The alien turned to her, its eyes, or whatever it had in place of eyes, fixing on her with an intensity she couldn't escape. "This is where it begins, where everything starts." Her mind raced. What begins? What do you mean?" The alien extended one arm toward the platform, and Sarah's eyes followed the motion. The platform seemed to hum with energy, and suddenly the room was filled with the soft, rhythmic sound of a deep pulse. The lights on the walls flickered, as if they were alive, reacting to the alien's presence. "This is the source," the alien said, "the core of our understanding, everything you are, everything you think you know about your species. It is here, embedded in the very fabric of this ship." Her breath caught in her chest. Everything she thought she knew. Was the alien suggesting that this ship had been collecting data on humanity for longer than she could comprehend? That everything she had ever done, every choice, every action, was somehow being analyzed by this alien force? "You've been studying us," she said, the realization hitting her like a punch to the stomach. "For how long? Why?" The alien's gaze seemed almost sorrowful, but still distant. "For as long as it has taken, for as long as we have needed. Your species is not what we expected." Sarah didn't know whether to be offended or intrigued. Not what they expected. What did that mean? She had spent years studying human history, evolution, psychology. Didn't the aliens know what humanity was like by now? "Your species has always been volatile," the alien continued. "Fragile, yet capable of immense strength. You rise and fall, adapt and destroy. You've reached for the stars, but your time of destruction is not yet over. You do not know the consequences of your actions, but we do." The words stung, but there was no time for her to process them. The platform began to glow brighter, and Sarah instinctively took a step back. The alien moved closer, its form shifting and pulsing, the light around it growing more intense. "You must understand," the alien said, its voice softer now, almost like a whisper. "We do not wish to harm you. We do not wish to control you. We only wish to understand." The platform began to hum louder, and Sarah's fear began to give way to something else. Something more primal. She could feel the energy in the room, an undercurrent of power that sent a shiver down her spine. Without warning, the floor beneath her feet seemed to give way, and she fell to her knees. A burst of light flashed across, The room and the symbols on the walls began to shift, moving in patterns that made her head spin. The room seemed to tilt, as if the very fabric of reality was bending. She gasped for breath, her heart racing. The alien stood before her, its form flickering like a hologram, fading in and out. "This is the truth," it said, its voice echoing in the vast space around her. "The truth of your future, of what is to come. The choices you make will decide the fate of your species. You have been chosen because you are at the center of it. You are the key." The words reverberated through her mind, crashing into her like a tidal wave. Her pulse pounded in her ears as the world around her continued to twist and bend. She had no idea what was happening, but one thing was certain. The aliens had been studying her for a reason. They hadn't just chosen her by accident. She was part of something far greater than she could have ever imagined, and whatever it was about to change everything. The weight of the alien's words lingered in Sarah's mind like a constant an unsettling vibration that refused to fade. "You are the key." The phrase echoed over and over, filling her thoughts, and yet it only made her feel more isolated. What was she the key to? And why her? She wasn't special. She was just a human, just one in a sea of billions. Yet somehow the alien had chosen her. As she stood there, the room around her seemed to pulse with the same energy that had shaken her to her core. The walls seemed to close in, the symbols now swirling, shifting, moving in patterns that made her dizzy. Was she losing her mind? Was she even still awake? Or was this just some twisted hallucination, a dream she couldn't escape from? The alien watched her closely, its glowing form flickering, its eyes, if that's what they were, intense and unblinking. It didn't speak immediately, as if giving her the time to process everything, but Sarah couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of dread gnawing at her. Finally, the alien spoke, its voice low and measured. "You are not what you think you are, Sarah. None of you are." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she whispered, barely able to hold herself together. "There is more to your species than you have been told," it continued. "More to your history than you can understand. Your world is built on lies, on illusions. You have been led to believe you are unique, that you are the center of your universe, but you are not." Her pulse raced as the alien's words cut through her like a knife. She felt the ground beneath her feet shift, the truth of its words settling into her chest like a weight she couldn't escape. The universe wasn't centered around humanity. The Earth wasn't the pinnacle of life. She had always believed in that, in human exceptionalism. But now, the foundation of everything she thought she knew was being ripped apart. The alien took a step closer to her, its light intensifying. "The history you know is a fabrication. Your species, your planet, it's all part of a much larger experiment, one that has been unfolding for centuries. You are not the first to believe that you are the only intelligent life in the universe, but you will be the last." Sarah shook her head, her mind spinning. "What experiment? What are you talking about?" The alien's form flickered as it seemed to process her confusion. "You will understand soon. Everything you believe about yourself is based on lies, lies that have been planted in your minds by those who created your civilization. The truth is much more complex." It raised one hand, and suddenly the chamber around them seemed to warp, the walls pulling away to reveal a vision that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. She saw Earth, but it wasn't like the Earth she knew. It was ancient, covered in vast cities, built by unknown civilizations, their designs far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Towering spires reached into the sky, and flying ships zipped across the horizon. But there was something off about the scene, something that unsettled her. "Your planet was not always like this," the alien said. "It was once a place of great power, a place where the advanced civilizations of the universe came to test their creations, to see how life would evolve. Your ancestors were not just humans, they were part of a grand design, a grand experiment. Sarah's breath caught. An experiment. She couldn't fathom it. The Earth, human history, all of it was built on something artificial, something orchestrated. What was the alien saying? And what did it mean for her, for humanity? The vision shifted again, and this time Sarah saw a series of symbols, markings that she recognized. They weren't the symbols of her world. They were the same symbols she had seen on the ship. The markings were ancient, written in a language that was far older than anything humanity had ever encountered. The creators of your civilization were not gods, the alien continued. They were beings who sought to control the rise and fall of life across the galaxy. They seeded many worlds with different forms of life, and Earth was one of their experiments. Humanity was created to be something unique, something that would challenge the very nature of the universe. Sarah felt a cold chill run down her spine. This was far beyond anything she had imagined. She had always thought of humanity as a species that had risen through its own strength, through its own ingenuity. But now it seemed that everything she had believed in, was false. "You are not the first species to undergo such a test," the alien said, its voice softer now, almost as if it were sympathetic. "But you will be the last. The experiment is coming to an end." "End," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. "What do you mean?" "The time has come for the final judgment. The results of the experiment will determine whether your species can survive, or if it will be wiped out, just like so many before you." The words hung in the air, thick with menace. Sarah couldn't process it all. She had always known that. There were things beyond human comprehension, things in the universe that were far beyond the reach of humanity. But to learn that they were being tested, that their entire existence had been manipulated by forces beyond their control, it shattered everything she had known. She felt a surge of panic rising in her chest. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "The choice is yours," the alien replied, its tone unwavering. "You can choose to fight against the inevitable, to resist the truth, or you can accept what is coming and prepare for the final phase of the experiment. Your species will either evolve, surpass its limitations, or be wiped from the face of the universe." The room around them seemed to shift once more, and Sarah could see the entire history of humanity flashing before her eyes. The rise and fall of civilizations, the wars, the triumphs, the betrayals. She saw it all. The human race, so small in the grand scale of the cosmos, struggling against the forces that sought to shape it. And now, it seemed, the final trial was at hand. Her heart pounded in her chest. "What happens if we fail?" she asked, her voice trembling. The alien's form flickered, its light dimming slightly. "If you fail, your species will cease to exist, and the experiment will be deemed a failure. Your world will be erased, and another will take its place. The cycle will continue." Sarah's world felt like it was crumbling around her. There was no escape from the truth. Humanity was just another test, another experiment in a vast cosmic game. The stakes were unimaginable, and yet here she was, caught in the middle of it all, standing before an alien that had watched and guided humanity for who knew how long. But there was one thing she had to know, one question that burned in her mind above all others. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why was I chosen?" The alien's eyes, if they could be called that, softened. "Because you are the key to understanding the truth. You have the potential to unlock the answers that will determine the future of your species. You have the power to change everything." Sarah swallowed hard, her mind racing. The weight of the alien's words pressed down on her with an unbearable force. The fate of humanity rested in her hands. But what could she do? What choice did she really have? And if the alien was right, if everything she had known was a lie, could she even trust her own instincts? The alien stepped back, its form shimmering in the dim light. "You must decide quickly," it said. "The final judgment is near." Sarah felt the floor beneath her tremble. The ship's hum grew louder, more insistent. Time was running out. Sarah's heart raced, a whirlwind of emotions churning inside her. "The final judgment is near." The alien's words echoed in her mind, each repetition growing more oppressive. It was impossible to ignore the weight of everything pressing down on her: humanity's future, her own existence, and the fate of countless lives were hanging in the balance, all because of a choice that she had to make. She stood there in the chamber, the alien still watching her. The walls pulsed around them, flickering with strange symbols that made her dizzy. The alien's glowing form cast eerie shadows across the room, its presence filling the space with an unsettling power. The choice was hers, but she didn't know what that choice was. What could she possibly do to save humanity from an outcome that seemed inevitable? Her breath caught in her throat as the memories flooded back, the stories she had been told as a child about human resilience, about the triumph of the human spirit against all odds. She had always believed those stories. She had always believed that humanity was special, that they could conquer anything. But now the truth was in front of her. Humanity was nothing more than a test, a grand experiment orchestrated by beings far beyond their understanding, and they were about to fail. Unless... She couldn't stop the thought from creeping in. Unless I do something. But what? What could one human, one person do against the vast, incomprehensible forces that had been shaping the fate of her species? Could she even change the course of history? The alien spoke again, its voice calm and steady. "The decision must be made, Sarah. The experiment cannot continue forever. The cycle must either be broken or completed." Sarah's pulse quickened. She had to make a choice, but how could she? How could she decide the fate of humanity in the blink of an eye? She looked up at the alien, her mind racing. "What happens if I refuse to make a choice?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The alien's eyes, if that's what they were, flashed with something akin to sadness. "Refusal is a choice in itself, and it will lead to the destruction of your species. The cycle will be reset, your world, your people, erased." Sarah's stomach turned. It wasn't an empty threat, she knew that. The alien wasn't just trying to intimidate her, it was telling the truth. Humanity's entire existence was at the mercy of forces far beyond their control. The universe wasn't some grand, unfathomable place of endless possibility. It was a series of tests, trials that each species had to face, and humanity's trial was nearing its end. Her mind reeled. She was only one person. She didn't have the power to change anything. She couldn't just will humanity's survival into existence, could she? "What if I accept the test?" she asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. The alien's form flickered, as if considering her question. "The test will not be easy. It will challenge everything your species believes about itself. The future of humanity will no longer be decided by chance, but by your will. But it can be done." Her heart skipped a beat. "By your will." Those words echoed in her mind. The alien was offering her a chance, one that no one had ever been given before. Humanity's future wasn't set in stone. It was fluid. It could be shaped by the choices made in this moment. But what would that mean? What did she have to sacrifice in order to give humanity a chance? What would she become in the process? "Humanity is at a crossroads," the alien continued. "You are the one who has been chosen because you can see past the illusion. You must take the first step. You must open the door to the future." The room seemed to pulse with energy, the symbols on the walls shifting, growing brighter, as if they were responding to the alien's words. Sarah felt a surge of power, a strange, overwhelming sensation, as if the universe itself were watching her, waiting for her decision. Her mind raced. She thought about her family, her friends, The life she had known. Could she really be the one to change everything? To make a decision that would determine the survival of all of humanity? Was it worth it? Was she willing to risk everything for a future that might not even exist? Could she trust the alien's words? Could she trust that this was the right choice? "Do you understand what is at stake?" the alien asked, its voice growing more urgent. "Once the choice is made, there is no turning back. You will be the catalyst for humanity's evolution or its extinction." The weight of those words settled over her like a cold blanket. There was no going back, no easy way out. She couldn't pretend that everything was normal, that humanity could keep living in ignorance. The world she had known, the Earth she had lived on, was no longer the reality she had grown up with. There were bigger forces at play. She was the key. That's what the alien had said. She was the one who could unlock the truth. But was she ready to face it? Was she ready to change everything? A cold chill ran through her as the alien's words began to sink in. "You have the power to change everything." Her thoughts flashed to the countless lives lost throughout history. The wars, the suffering, the uncountable tragedies, all of it part of the cycle, part of the test. But she had a chance to break it. A chance to change the course of humanity's destiny. A chance to break free from the cycle that had been designed for them. Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was it. The moment that would define everything. "I accept," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I accept the test." The alien's form seemed to shimmer with approval, its light intensifying. "Then you will be the one to unlock humanity's true potential. The final judgment will begin." The room around her seemed to dissolve, the symbols shifting and flickering faster than ever. She felt herself being pulled into a vortex, a swirling mass of light and energy that twisted her perception of reality. The ground beneath her feet seemed to vanish, and for a moment she felt as if she were floating in a vast, infinite space. Was this the future? Was she seeing the world as it could be, as it would be if humanity could evolve, could break free from the chains that bound it? The alien's voice filled the air, resonating with an otherworldly power. "The test begins now. Choose wisely." And then Sarah felt it, the moment where everything shifted. A single thought, a single choice. The door was open. The future was in her hands. The end